This is what the G2 Pro sounds like when you're running with the dead cat on, in case you were curious. I'm sure I look ridiculous. Today we've got the Synco G2 wireless mic system. It provides high quality audio and a lot of the features of some very popular options on the market at a lower price point. Let's take a closer look and see if it's a good choice for your content. Before we dive in, I want to mention that Synco sent me the G2 Pro kit for the purpose of making this review. However, I was not paid to make this video, and all opinions I share here will be my own. Now, you're currently hearing the audio from the G2 Pro running straight into my camera from the receiver, and we will be testing out the USB functionality as well, because you can also connect the G2 Pro to your computer or a mobile device and get the audio into your video that way as well. Now, a kit like this can also be very useful in a dual audio setup. For example, if you do a lot of talking head videos that feature guests, if you're doing interviews, with that type of content, it's always a good idea to have more than one option for the way you're capturing your audio. So a wireless mic system is a great option for something that the subject can wear and send the audio to your camera, because in some environments, that source of audio will actually sound the best. But then you can also have an external microphone positioned on a boom recording to a separate recorder, because in some other environments, that might be the audio setup that actually sounds the best. All right, we've got a lot more testing to get to here, but first let's just do a quick rundown of all of these features and specifications of the G2 Pro kit. For this voiceover, I will be applying some processing, including EQ, compression, and a little bit of noise reduction, just so you can get a sense of how the G2 Pro sounds with some processing applied. I will list all the plugins I used for this down in the video description. The G2 Pro A2 kit includes 2 transmitters, 1 receiver, and a USB-C charging case. There is also a kit available with 1 transmitter. Everything charges automatically when you place it back into the case, and inside the case there are lights to indicate the case battery level. The battery life of the transmitter and receiver is about 8 hours on a full charge, and Synco states you can get a total of 24 hours of use by recharging with the case. The G2 Pro uses the 2.4 GHz frequency band and has a line of sight range of up to 200 meters or 656 feet, and up to 50 meters or 164 feet without direct line of sight. The transmitters automatically connect to the receiver when powered on. The transmitters include a built-in microphone, and they also have a 3.5mm TRS input for using external microphones. 2 lavalier microphones are included in the kit as well. Frequency response of the built-in microphone is 50 Hz to 20 kHz, and the maximum SPL is 120 dB. The transmitters weigh 39 grams and have dimensions of 52 by 42 by 17 millimeters and attach via clip. Gain can be controlled by both the transmitter and receiver, and gain is controlled in steps from 0 to +15 in increments of 3. The transmitter also has a noise reduction button to enable enhanced noise reduction, which is displayed on the transmitter screen when turned on. Recording modes include stereo, mono, and safety track. On safety track mode, the left channel is recorded at the normal level, and the right channel is recorded 6 dB lower in case the left channel clips during recording. The receiver includes a 3.5mm output and separate 3.5mm headphone output to monitor while recording, as well as a USB-C port for charging and use with computers and mobile devices. The receiver is compatible with Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android, and will show as an audio input on your device. Audio conversion over USB is 16-bit, 48 kHz. Other provided accessories include a 3.5mm TRS cable, 3.5mm TRS to TRRS cable, USB-C to USB-C, and 2 dead cats for the transmitters. All right, now let's get into testing some more of the features of the G2 Pro. So far, you've been hearing it on the safety track mode without the noise reduction turned on, running straight into my camera. Let's test out the noise reduction. All right, so here's a sample of the noise reduction turned on and what it sounds like. And this is a quiet recording environment. I'll give you a sample outdoors in just a moment with the noise reduction on and off. But here's what it sounds like indoors. Now, I want to point out one thing. The indicator, the little visual indicator on the transmitter of when the noise reduction is turned on, that's only on the transmitter. On the receiver, there's no visual indication that the noise reduction is turned on. So you can only tell that by looking at the little symbol on the transmitter. Also, one other thing I want to point out about the transmitter, I'm not putting this in the pros and cons section really, I just want to mention it for awareness. The transmitter's little screen will turn off after a while. It doesn't mean the transmitter turned off, it just kind of the screen goes to sleep if you don't press any of the buttons for a while. However, if you then press the noise reduction button or the gain button on the transmitter, all that does, that first press just wakes the screen back up. It doesn't actually change any setting. You need to press the button again after the screen comes back on to actually do what you're trying to do. All right, and now we're back to noise reduction off. Let's do a sample of the audio over USB instead of the 3.5 millimeter output. And now here's a sample of the G2 Pro recording into my computer now, so it's not recording directly into the camera anymore. I have connected the USB-C output to my MacBook and I'm recording the audio in Audacity. There could be a difference. Let me know in the comments if you hear a difference from the USB output in the computer to the camera audio. Editing Jeff here. I noticed while editing this video that I forgot to say something I really wanted to make sure I said. While using the USB output recording into your computer with a program like Audacity, you can actually still use the 3.5 millimeter output to your camera, so you can actually have the audio match in your camera as well as recording it externally. Now you're still relying on the wireless transmission from the receiver. It's not quite the same thing as like having a backup from internal recording, but I just wanted to point out both outputs do work at the same time. All right, starting our range test for the Synco G2 Pro, recording in safety track mode with our dead cat installed, but noise reduction is not turned on. This is a distance of 10 meters. And now this is a distance of 25 meters from the camera. Now this is a distance of 50 meters away from the camera. At this distance, this is already getting to be very far away from the camera, probably further than what most people need to be shooting in a typical recording scenario. Distance of 100 meters away from the camera, I'm probably a little speck. Again, this is a distance I wouldn't expect the average recording scenario to require. And this is a distance of 142 meters away from the camera. I'm at the tree line here. I can't go any further with a clear line of sight in this location, so I'm almost at 150 meters. This is pretty crazy far away from the camera, 142 meters away. And here's a quick sample of the G2 Pro running over USB with the camera adapter for iPhone going into my iPhone 14 Pro Max. I do have noise reduction turned on right now because I'm standing right near a road with lots of traffic behind me. This is just a sample so that you can get a sense for the audio, the way it sounds going over a USB connection into an iPhone. Certainly works in a vlogging setup. And just so you can tell the difference, I have now turned off noise reduction. So here's what the ambient sound is like right here without noise reduction turned on. Now here's a sample of the included lavalier microphone connected to the transmitter. These are great options to have if you're doing anything where you want a more subtle look, where you don't want a really big obvious transmitter on you or on your subject. So it's great that they include two of these in the kit. And here's a sample of how that sounds. And now here's a comparison to one of the most popular choices on the market for content creators in the last couple of years, the Rode Wireless Go 2. You're hearing the built-in microphone of the Wireless Go 2 going to the receiver and straight into my camera. Now the most significant difference from the Wireless Go 2 system and the G2 Pro system from a feature standpoint is that the transmitters have internal recording available. So I'm recording the audio in the transmitter now so that in case I run into any interference or signal dropouts, I still have this internal audio and I'll be going back and forth so you can hear the difference between the internal recorded audio and the wireless audio in this sample. All right, let's talk about the pros and cons that I have observed while testing out the G2 Pro. First up, the pros. I think the audio quality of the built-in transmitter microphone is pretty great. I know that's pretty subjective, but the Wireless Go 2, for me, something about that built-in microphone sounds a little bit harsh, especially on my voice. So you might feel differently about it for your voice. That's just how I feel. Of course, once you throw a lavalier microphone into the mix, then all bets are off because all lavalier microphones are slightly different. They produce different sounds. So depending on the lavalier microphone you're using, that's going to change the final audio that you get. Another pro for me is the separate headphone output, and that is something that the Rode Wireless Go system does not have. The G2 Pro gives you a separate dedicated output for monitoring. You can do that with everything still connected. Another pro for me is the connectivity because you've got USB output as well as the 3.5 millimeter output, and both outputs work at the same time, so you can record both into your device and into your camera. Another pro for me is the signal strength. I think it's on par with the Wireless Go 2 as far as what I've gotten. Now, if you're gonna use this system or any other sort of more consumer or prosumer level wireless mic system that uses a 2.4 gigahertz band, if you're gonna be using these systems in a very densely populated area with a lot of residential Wi-Fi signals around. For example, I did some distance testing up on the top level of the parking garage for my apartment building, and I had good reception on the receiver up to 50 meters, but once I started going beyond that, that's where I started getting the signal cutting in and out a little bit and getting some interference in there. But I found the same thing with the Wireless Go 2. When I tested out in a more open area, I had no problem getting a strong signal all the way up to 100 meters away. And yes, the G2 Pro states it can operate up to 200 meters away. However, in my opinion, even 50 meters away from the camera is very far away. I mean, here's a quick snapshot of what the camera looked like to me from a distance of 50 meters away. So I'm still counting it as a pro that you get good reception up to 50 meters in a densely populated area with a lot of wireless interference going on, and at least 100 meters in more open areas. To me, that's perfectly usable range. The last thing that falls under pros for me is really just the value for the price. You're getting a lot here for a price of $200. All right, so as I mentioned, let's talk about the cons now, because this is certainly not perfect. There are two things missing from this kit that the competitors at the higher price points offer. The first being internal recording, and the second being 24-bit audio over the USB output. So the Rode Wireless Go 2, the Digi system, and the Hollyland Lark Max all cost more than the G2 Pro, all about $100 more. However, all of them offer internal recording in the transmitter. You don't have that with the G2 Pro. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I could see the G2 Pro being part of a dual audio setup where you have some other source of audio, especially if the type of content you're filming is something you only have one shot to get. If you're interviewing somebody that and you can't just call them back to reshoot on short notice, you definitely would want a second option to use in case you run into wireless transmission issues. And that second thing that's missing is the 24-bit audio over USB. Now that's not the end of the world, because the audio that goes into your camera via the 3.5mm output is going to be 16-bit captured in your camera, no matter which of these microphone systems we're talking about. So those are the two big trade-offs. That's what you're not getting with the G2 Pro, that you are getting with the more expensive options in the Wireless Go 2 or the Hollyland Lark Max or the Digi Mic system. Now there's just a few other small cons that I want to point out based on my testing and my experience with the G2 Pro. And the first one of those has to do with when a lav mic is plugged into the transmitter. When a lavalier microphone is plugged into the transmitter, no matter which lav we're talking about, I tried this with the included one as well as with a Sennheiser one and a Rode one, the metering on both the transmitter and the receiver seems to just kind of get all funky and go haywire, because even with the level set to 0, it looks like your audio is clipping. It's constantly up in the yellow and the red clipping indicator on the meters that are on the transmitter and the receiver. However, the in-camera audio levels look normal. So it just seems like something goes a little bit haywire when you plug in an external microphone input into the transmitter as far as the metering goes. Another small con for me is the safety track. I think is almost not quite safe enough. It's recorded at -6 and then you don't have control to change that level, but it would be nice if the safety track was -12 or even -20, which is what it is with the Wireless Go 2. All right, a couple more cons here. One of them is the noise reduction. I think the noise reduction has a couple of small issues with it. Number one, it's pretty aggressive to me. It sounds like a pretty processed sound, like it's cutting into the vocal frequencies quite a bit when it's turned on. The second small issue I experienced with noise reduction, I think you can hear, especially if you wear headphones, during the test I did with my iPhone. And the noise reduction was producing this kind of odd, almost like you're in a submarine kind of sound. But to me, that was another little con there to the noise reduction. Just another reason why I personally would rather record without it and then work with noise reduction in post. Okay, so with all those pros and cons in mind, who is the G2 Pro for and would I recommend it? Well, yes and no. There are scenarios where I would recommend the G2 Pro and there are scenarios where I would not. Let's start with where I would not recommend it. There's two main scenarios that I've mentioned along the way here where I would not really recommend the G2 Pro. Number one, if it's your only source, if this is gonna be the one thing you use and you don't really have a secondary source of audio and the type of content that you record is stuff that you only have one shot to get. Unless you've got another person with you who can monitor the audio in real time while you're recording, you won't know that you're having a wireless transmission interference or dropouts until after the fact, and after the fact is too late if you only had one shot to record. Now that issue pretty much goes away if you have a dual audio setup. So if you do have a secondary setup and you just are looking to add a wireless setup, then in that scenario, I would recommend the G2 Pro, because as long as you're comfortable with the trade-offs of not having internal recording and not having 24-bit audio over the USB connection, then I think it's worth saving that extra $100 and going with a system like the G2 Pro. Those two things you're trading off to save the money. So I hope you found this helpful. Let me know down in the comments if it was, or if you have any questions about the G2 Pro. Do me a favor and hit the thumbs up if you did find it helpful, and don't forget to subscribe to the Semi-Pro Tech & Gear channel, because I'm going to be doing an upcoming video where I compare the G2 Pro to the Hollyland Lark Max and the Rode Wireless Go 2, sort of a head-to-head showdown at a couple different price points. So if you want to see that, hit that subscribe button. Thanks everybody. See you next time.